Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be discussing my review of the book Star Trek The Next Generation Before Dishonor by Peter David. This is a Star Trek Next Generation book that is mainly about the Borg and about an impending Borg invasion that occurs. It was released in 2007, and I have been really getting into the Borg books recently. I just recently read a book that technically in the timeline comes out later, which is Greater Than the Sum. And then a couple years ago, I read the Destiny trilogy, which was pitched as the Alpha and Omega of the Borg. And I thought the Destiny trilogy was really well done, although it didn't deliver on all the Borg promises that it made. And I thought that Greater Than the Sum was a better Borg story, but wasn't necessarily a better story overall, and was a much smaller scale. This book, Before Dishonor, gives us the big epic Borg story that we've wanted in the most Star Trek epic movie level, and also tells a great story. And so, if you want a good Borg story, I would say this is the best that I've read so far. I absolutely loved this book. Sometimes I equivocate and say, well, I liked a book, but is it a favorite? This is for sure in my top 5 Star Trek books now. It is a superb, wonderful book, and I'll get into why without getting into spoilers. What's really interesting is that I read Peter David's book that he wrote with John Delancey called IQ, about Q. And I did not like this book at all. I was very frustrated throughout. I thought that Peter David was very rude towards certain groups of peoples, and it just wasn't an interesting read to me. So I was nervous because everyone says Peter David's one of the best, if not for a lot of people, he is the best Star Trek author. And I was worried about getting into another one of his books. So I picked up Before Dishonor, a little bit nervous, and boy, were my worries unfounded, because this book is just superb, is the word I use for this. Just a wonderful book. It is both very doom and gloom and lighthearted at the same time. It has a lot of great humor and a lot of great action scenes and a lot of great epic themes. And so what this book has is its style. I feel like this could have been adapted to be a script for one of the big movies. I think it would have been a bigger scale movie than First Contact, and I think this should have been the type of Borg invasion book that we should have gotten. This one tells a much more traditional Star Trek type story with that, and also is what I had been hoping to see when I found out First Contact was a Borg story. And so this book, it delivers on its promises, which you would not think is a hard sell, but so often books are promised as something and then they're so small scale because it's a tie-in fiction, they can't make everything tie in. But this one delivers. It absolutely delivers. One criticism I have about the book is that when it built up to the climax, there is a certain character involved, a non-Next Generation character, who has big moments in this book and leading up to. And I'm going to be try to careful because I don't want to spoil anything. And if you have read beyond this line, you know what happens with this character. And I did not like the way they set up what happened in this book, because I felt like they didn't give this character enough time for this. I felt like this character's used in the book very little, disappears for a majority in the book, and then shows up at the end. And they just needed more time within the book. I actually would have, if I was the one writing this, I would have retooled it and made it either a crossover book and focused more on Voyager, because the main characters in this book are Seven of Nine and Picard, and then there is like a third focus on Janeway. I think they could have easily made it more crossover-ish and made it bigger, even bigger still. Even though this is a fantastic, superb book, they could have focused more on Voyager, which is what I think this book needed to be. And I think it has a bit of an identity crisis in who it's marketed to, and also in what it could be. But at the same time, it's still epic and still really cool to read. My copy is really beaten up. The spine has been cracked so many times. I was worried pages were going to fall out. But I got this at a used bookstore for dirt cheap, and boy, was it worth it. I'm going to try to find a better copy because this book is so good. It's definitely, I would say, I would recommend this as one of the starting points for people, even more than a starting point than the other books, because I think this leads up. If you think there, you have Resistance, which I am going to read. So I'm reading the books out of order. I started late in the timeline and I'm working back, but you read Resistance, and then you read Before Dishonor, and then you read Greater Than the Sum, and then you read the Destiny trilogy. That's a pretty good combination. You're gonna feel like you just got an epic story right there. And so this book is a great lead-in, and this is, even though it's a standalone, it does lead in. And one of the great things about this book is the way it shows how the crew is evolving. Throughout the books and even the show, the crew is changing. Characters are leaving one ship to go to another. Characters from other ships are coming in. And so our main heroes are feeling like, am I part of the old crew? Am I part of the new crew? Does the captain trust me as a new crew member as much as he trusts the old crew members? And there is a rift that is created between the old crew members, such as Crusher, such as Worf and LaForge, those types of people who have been there since day one. And then you have the new people like Counselor Talana, I think is how you pronounce that, Talana, and then Cadota, Commander Cadota. And then you also have Lesberanin, one of the other guys. And so there's basically a rift between them on the Enterprise, and they're both jockeying for power in a sense. And that the old characters, are classic crew, they're right, but the new characters keep getting in their way. And this is actually something that's used later on in the timeline in other books that I think works really well, but it also works really well here. There are huge epic set pieces. This has big scope. There are huge battles. There are, you think the Borg, you think we have a big weapon now? Well, here's an even bigger weapon. Oh, and you thought that was cool. Watch this. There's constant one-upping happening in the book, and there's characters who are on Earth who are just watching it, and they're like, this can't possibly get worse. And then it does get worse. It's just delightful to read. It feels like a disaster movie mixed with a sci-fi kind of concept movie. Almost like I'm trying to think the right. It's like if Independence Day and what was that movie, that comedy that just came out about the asteroid. You combine those two movies with Star Trek First Contact, mesh them together. You'd get this book. It's not quite as bizarro crazy as that one movie I was referring to. Anyway, so I thought that the action was just so well done. You were able to understand where the characters are and where they're going. There are plenty of callbacks to other stories of Star Trek, but if you don't know those, it's okay because everything's explained perfectly in this book, as a good tie-in author should do. And so there are great callbacks, and also the humor in this book is on point. Apparently, Peter David's known for having a quite lighthearted, humorous tone, and that is very obviously on display here, because there are joke after joke after joke, particularly from two characters, and that is Seven of Nine and Spock. Spock makes an appearance in this book, and you would think those are like the two least funny people in Star Trek. No, they have great deadpan. Like, basically, people are reacting to them, and they will give a response that is just golden. There's just humorous. There is one point in the book where Spock says, is it time for another colorful expression? Colorful metaphor is the word. And oh my, is it funny. It is perfectly placed. It could have been cheesy. It could have been, okay, that was a cheap move. No, that was perfectly placed from Spock in this book. And Seven of Nine basically at one point has to hijack a ship, and the expression on the other person's face in the ship is just hilarious. It's just, and the way that she explains things and she's telling the truth, but he has no idea that she's telling the truth. He thinks she's lying. Oh, it's just hilarious. And so I give this book very high marks for the humor, which does not always work in Star Trek books. Sometimes humor can fall flat. I just read the book, and I'm so sorry I have to, the book, How Much for Just a Planet. I think I have it right here. Yeah, I just read this book, which is supposed to be a comedy, and I hated it. And I do not really review one-star books here, but this is the first one-star I've given all year because it was just not good. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons I didn't like it, but this book is supposed to be a comedy, and the comedic stuff didn't work, nor the serious stuff. This book is a serious book, but it also has great comedy, and this is a better example of how to do comedy in Star Trek, I think. This just fits better with the Star Trek aesthetic that I like. So the humor really works. I will also say that there is an element of the Q in this book, particularly a character that's Lady Q. Peter David really used her well. If I can give Peter David one thing, is he knows the character of Q, and he uses him well in this book. Not so much in the IQ book, but for sure in this book, he knows how to use Q. So I really liked the inclusion of her. And there's so much in this book that are spoilers, not just for this book, but for future books in the series, particularly the Voyager books, that I can't get into. But I liked how this set those up, and I like how those pay this off. And it really can't really talk about that without that. So maybe I'll do a separate spoiler video someday for that. But for right now, I loved this book. I would give this book like a 9.8 out of 10. Like seriously, an amazing book. Top tier Star Trek novel for me. Just utterly superb. So, that's my review of Before Dishonor. If you've read this book, let me know your comments down below. If you have also read How Much for the Planet, let me know your thoughts on that one. I won't be doing a review for it. I'm sorry, but no, I didn't like it. But let me know your thoughts down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.